day. My name is Philip Msamba. I'm going to do a presentation on Unit 11, where we are going to dwell and discuss about poverty in the United Kingdom. Today we're going to delve into the complex issue of poverty in the United Kingdom. We'll explore how we define and measure poverty, look at the current trends, and discuss the challenges we face in the 21st century. This isn't just about statistics, it's about understanding the real world impact on people's lives. We'll start by laying the groundwork for what poverty truly means. We've got introduction to poverty. We are defining poverty. Poverty is far more than simply not having enough money. It's about lacking the essential resources to meet basic needs and fully participate in society. This broader definition helps us understand the true scope of the problem. We'll be focusing on key themes like absolute versus relative poverty, the significant role of housing cost, and the wider societal impact. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation reminds us that poverty is about being unable to afford what most people take for granted. So let's unpack these core concepts, starting with absolute poverty. Absolute poverty gives us a baseline, a fixed point to measure against. Is defined as living below a set income threshold, typically 60% of the median income from a specific base year, adjusted for inflation. This measure tells us if the poorest individuals are seeing their living standards genuinely improve over time. For example, if a family income stays the same but the cost of food and heating skyrockets, they could fall into absolute poverty. In 2022 to 2023, we saw approximately 12 million people in the UK experiencing absolute poverty before housing costs. But this is only one piece of the puzzle. Next, we will look at relative poverty, which offers a different perspective. Relative poverty, the moving target. While absolute poverty looks at a fixed baseline, relative poverty is a moving target. It's defined as living below 60% of the current median income in any given year. This measure is crucial for understanding inequality in social exclusion, showing us how far the poorest are falling behind the average standard of living. If everyone's income goes up, but the gap between the rich and the poor remains, relative poverty persists. In 2022 and 2023, around 14.3 million people in the UK were in relative poverty after housing costs. Now, let's explore why both these measures are so vital for a complete picture. Comparing the two, why both matter: absolute poverty and relative poverty. Absolute poverty, like I said, is set to the poorest people, real standard of living, and whether their purchasing power improves over time. Whereas relative poverty, it measures how far the poorest fall behind the typical household, reflecting exclusion from normal social life. So why do we need both absolute and relative poverty measures? They each tell us something distinct and important. Absolute poverty shows if people's real living standards are improving over time, while relative poverty highlights how far the poorest are from the average, indicating social exclusion. Consider the 2008 financial crisis. Relative poverty actually decreased because middle incomes fell faster than benefit payments, but people weren't better off. In fact, absolute poverty rose. This example clearly shows that a decrease in relative poverty doesn't always mean the poorest are thriving. Understanding both helps us grasp the full complexity of poverty in the UK. Historical context, evolution of poverty. 1890s, the scientific pioneers Charles Booth and Sebum Rowntree conduct the first empirical studies in London and York, establishing the concept of a poverty line based on natural nutritional requirements. 1940s, the welfare state, the Beveridge report. 1942 identifies want as one of 5 giants. Post-war reforms lead to the creation of the NHS and the comprehensive social security system. 1960s, the rediscovery. Abel Smith and Townsend's research reveals that poverty persisted despite the welfare state, shifting the focus from absolute survival to relative social participation. We've discussed how we measure poverty, but understanding its history is crucial. The UK's approach to poverty has evolved significantly over time, especially pioneers like Charles Booth and Sebum Rowntree gave us the first scientific studies establishing the idea of a poverty line based on basic needs. After World War II, the Beveridge Report and the creation of welfare state aimed to eliminate want, leading to the NHS and a comprehensive social security system. But by the 1960s, researchers like Abel Smith and Townsend showed that poverty persisted, shifting our focus from mere survival to social participation. This historical journey helps us understand the foundations of our current policies. Now let's look at how these trends have played out in more recent times. Modern trends, poverty in the 21st century. 1980s to 2000s, rapid growth in inequality through the 1980s, followed by targeted interventions like tax credits and reduced child pensioner poverty. 2010s present, austerity and welfare reforms slowed progress as housing costs rose and real wages stagnated, leading into the current cost of living crisis. Building on that historical context, let's examine modern trends in UK poverty. The late 20th century saw a dramatic rise in inequality, particularly in the 1980s, while targeted interventions like tax credits in the 2000s did reduce the child pensioner poverty. Progress has stalled. The 2010s brought austerity and welfare reforms, which combined with the rising housing costs and stagnant wages, have led us into the current cost of living crisis. For example, child poverty has risen from 27% in 2010 and 2011 to around 30% today, affecting 4.3 million children. These trends highlight the ongoing challenges we face. So how do we actually measure these shifts? We've seen the modern trends, and now we need to understand how we can measure them. The official UK measure in households below average income, HBI, it uses a 60% median income threshold reported below and after housing cost. However, HBAI has limitations because it doesn't fully capture the real world costs people face. That's where the Social Metrics Commission comes in. Their alternative measure adjusts the inescapable costs like childcare and disability, providing a more comprehensive picture of lived experience. While HBI is legislative standard, the SMC offers a more nuanced view. This brings us to a critical question: who is the most affected with these measures? Following discussion on measurement, it's clear that poverty doesn't affect everyone equally. Certain groups are significantly more vulnerable. Children are particularly at a risk. 4.3 million or 30% living in poverty, impacting their health and education. Single parents are also face immense challenges, with over 40% of children in these households experiencing poverty. Disabled people often incur higher costs and face greater poverty risk. In current challenges and conclusion, we've explored the vulnerable groups, and now we must confront the current challenges head on. The cost of living crisis, driven by inflation and soaring energy prices, is pushing more households into destitution. We're also seeing a rise in inward poverty, where people are working but still can't make ends meet. Systematic barriers like high housing costs and child care expensive remain primary drivers of low disposable income. Ultimately, poverty is a complex and persistent issue. Addressing it requires a multifaceted approach. Fair wages, a strong social security system, and affordable housing are all essential pieces of the puzzle. Thank you.